Welcome back to Stasis, Geek. Episode 3, The Last of Us. Now, I've said before, I've never played the game. Don't know much about the game. So these characters are kind of new. Now, it felt to me this episode was a bit pointless. And I mean that from the payoff. Because there isn't any. The point of this episode is nothing. It's a story within a story that has no payoff. It's a very strange one. Now, I had to make some notes on this episode because there's bits of it really annoyed me. And bits of it I really liked. And bits of it I found stupidly boring. And if you go onto the Twit world, apparently this is the most heartfelt, warming, crying episode of all time. It could have been. It could have been if it was over 3-4 episodes. Now, before I get into why that, so let's go where we started off. Okay, so we start off with Joel and Ellie. And this is where it does, the episodes, what we get told later on, gets a bit confusing. Not just this episode, but the end of the last. So, of course, Tess is dead. And now they're in the woods. Now, the first thing that annoyed me is I have slept in the woods. Now, this is maybe the game tells it differently, but brain here tells me that mostly mushrooms will grow in wet, mouldy places, in the dark, like forests. So that was a bit of a... Now, also, oh no, I'll get back to that because there was a funny bit about the food when they try. So, what's her name? Ellie goes into a basement. They find an abandoned like petrol station or gas station, and then she goes into the basement, and then happens to be a zombie dead, the only one we see in this episode, and it shows that she's a bit of a psychopath. That's the only one I can think, because she kind of torments it with the knife and stabs it. And this is after she's just found some tampons. Now, the bit about the tampons is I thought, oh, they're going to bring up something clever here. Not that she's female tampons. She's going to say, I found tampons. Because if you're in a post-apocalyptic world, you want tampons, sanitary towels. Everybody would want them because they can be used as a field dressing. So it was a weird situation at that. I just thought, okay, why? Because we're telling her that female. I don't get that. So that was a bit of odd. I thought they were going to play on that, but it didn't. So she kind of kills the zombie, and then Joel and her are just walking, and she kind of wants to discuss what happened, even though in the previous episode and in this she says she went to school, so they don't talk, and then there wouldn't be the parents talking. Even though she's an orphan, there would other people there that would give the correct information. So Joel explains all of it, all about the past and why it happened. You know, some of it relevant, some of it you just boring. Now the funniest bit was to me, and it's going on, is there's dangers in this series going through, but it's, you know, they're tick boxing, but unfortunately they have discriminated against one set of people, and that's you vegans, because you're all dead in this world. You are dead. Now I say that is because I am allergic to mushrooms. This show is made for me, and I know most vegan foods is they put substitutes in for what could be the gluten elements into it as mushrooms. They put fillers, mushroom in everything. Now, nowadays, they didn't use like 5 years ago. Now everything's mushroom. sorry, vegans, you're dead because you've eaten all the food that's contaminated, because that's how they explain it. Is there was a contamination of mushroom spore that got out, went into different products, and if you ate too much, you're dead. So vegans, you don't exist in this world. So mostly, if you're a meat eater, you would have survived. Well done. Well, you've grown your own food, I suppose, and it was uncontaminated. But yeah, pre-packaged vegan food, stay clear. That's what it's trying to tell you. I just found that funny because it's just the relevance there that, yeah, vegans are bad because we just killed them all off. Okay, so we get onto that. So we move on, and then it's just they talk, and then they come across what I thought they were going to go into is they see this mass grave, like, well, not a grave, it's just the bodies have been decomposing over 20 years. And Joel tells them, the dead can't get affected. That's why they shot him. So that's happened. And then we get a flashback. And this is the flashback because the clothing that hasn't deteriorated or blown away is part of, it looks like a young lady and a kid. Yeah, and what they're saying is Joel explains that these small towns, rural towns, they got moved into were getting told they were going into the centres of the big cities to things, but they just shot them. Okay, that's interesting. But then we find this loner, it looks like, under his basement. He's got all his CCTV set up, and he's hiding from the soldiers to kind of, I want to be on my own, I can do this by myself. And we see some of, like, he's got quite a good stock full of equipment, and he's fully armed. So he goes out and he comes out with his respirator on, and he goes blah 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 trying to find anybody. And then this is where this show goes a bit weird, as I thought we were getting something and then we got something completely different. Now we find out his name's Bill, and Bill is really interesting character because he is, I want to survive, and he rushes around and he gets all the resources he can get. Now, one thing I didn't get was he turns on the gas. Yeah, and then nobody recognises this, so he gets full gas. Now, okay, also, it's a weird one. Now, he's obviously likes his wine, and it gets told later on. But then 20 years goes past. So did he have 20 years worth of stock of wine? Because it looked like they had a bottle every night. Now, okay, he puts on his generator. Now, the generator's really loud. And it doesn't attract anyone and doesn't bring attention to anyone. Bit odd. Yeah? So it goes on and on and on, and it just shows him kind of, getting wood, constructing this fence. It goes through like this really fast. We don't see it. It just happens. Now, this is where this episode falls for me, because it shows him doing all this, but it's such a time sped up. I kind of, this character could be interesting. He's just doing stuff. Now, if they dragged out an episode of just Bill just reinforcing his security, doing all these little traps, getting his resources, and being a proper loner. And I mean, he wants to be by himself. He's happy, he's secure, and he gets a couple of zombies come in. I'm calling them zombies. I'm guessing that's what they're going to be called. Coming in, and he survives by either his traps or he takes them out himself. So it shows he's not just surviving. He knows what he's doing. He's very good at what he's doing. That would have been interesting. And I mean that because you would have got a better play of what is to come. So he does all that. Yeah. And he has a sit down meal, and he goes off. And then one of his traps. Yeah. Now, I'm going to play a joke here, because when we find out, then Frank drops in his hole. It drops into his hole later, but he drops into his hole. Then he gets a ladder out and he lets him out. And he goes, well, I haven't eaten for 2 days. And then Bill gets it out of kindness. Kind of goes, okay, I'm going to take you in. Gives him a shower, gives him new clothes, and gives him this epic meal. Now, I'm guessing at this point, you look at his structure. This is a few years. There's been a few years that this apocalyptic world has been. And he, instead of going, I'm just going to cook you spam and eggs, I don't know. He cooks him a full, beautiful roast dinner. Yeah, and he gets his wine out. This is a person, apparently, I don't want you here, but he kind of 5-star treatment at this point, the apocalypse. So that happens. Then this bit is weird with the playing of the piano. And I mean it is because Frank ranks up to, I don't know, tone number 10, apparently your gaydar, because he plays a tune and butchers a script, and then Bill comes in and plays it, but plays it as properly, I suppose, the only way he can do it. He doesn't butcher it. And then, is it I don't know the song? But how would you ever equivalent that person is homosexual by a song they just sung on the piano? So he goes in, gaydar work, because it turns out Bill's into it as well, but he's never done it. Okay, then it's very strange because you get the most. Apparently, Bill once had a girlfriend, and of course, it didn't work out because he was a closet gay. That's fine. And then you have this weird, really awkward sex scene. I didn't mind that. I found it quite awkward, but it was just they just stuck at it. It should have they should have had a bit more levity into it. Okay, that's it. With his towel, and they're like that, and okay, it's a sex scene. That's fine. And then it skips again, and now the next one is Frank wanting to do up the place, make it look pretty, because he wants to have friends over. And you're like, what? Well, one, what are you doing being on the radio and telling them up these people where you are? You don't know who they are. And it gave me a bit of Walking Dead vibes, at the end when they're talking, they shouldn't be talking on the radar. But then we'd find out, okay, they agreed to talk, and then they have this beautiful sit-down meal outside in the sunshine. In this post-apocalyptic, zombie-ridden, virus-stricken world. So there's Tess, there's Joel, Bill and Frank. And Bill has got his pistol out, and it's quite amusing that he won't put it away until Joel tells him off. But now, everybody's looking good. Everybody's looking good. Tess looks good. Joel looks good. Bill and Frank, their beards are getting a bit stringy. But Joel and Tess, this is apparently, I think this is supposed to be now 2007. I might have got the dates wrong. So we're at the right time is 2023. How come Joel looks exactly the same? If we skip far ahead, Bill ages. Frank, really, I know he gets ill, and we'll go into that, but he ages. Joel, face cream, wow. maybe they're trying to say it. It's like a stupid comment, but that if you're homosexual, you age quicker? I don't know. It's very weird. It's like maybe stress levels. I don't know. It's bizarre. So they have their wine, and then Joel has a go at Bill, and they don't get on, but they understand each other. They kind of understand they're getting in a thing. Then, of course, we jump forward another few years. Now, this scene annoyed me when they're running. It's because I'm guessing it's a thing Frank likes to do, is run, and he's taken Bill along to their running. And Bill gets a stitch and he can't do it. But this is 10 years later. So wouldn't they be fit? And Bill is still fat. He's still overweight. So does he not do this? Why is he doing it now, 10 years later? And this is what my problem is with this episode. It's because We're jumping. I want to understand the relationship of Frank and Bill. That would have been nice. You could have had Bill, then Frank comes in, and Bill's a bit skeptic. Then they form a relationship, and they turn out they actually like each other, and then have a relationship. It then goes into another episode. Then you have committed this actual love relationship within the apocalypse whilst they are both surviving, because they don't need to do anything. They are having we're doing up the place, we're putting flowers in place, we're making the place look nice, we're sweeping the roads, whatever they're doing. They are not at point being attacked once. They're living this happy life. Why isn't anybody else then? If this is this easy, when you're not being attacked, you're not showing an attack, just stay in your home. Fortify it, stay in your home, you're fine. You might get the odd people trying to steal your stuff, what we find a little bit later, but that's it. Then breaking it up to have one episode. Bill. At the end, Frank turns up. Injured or whatever. Bill has to look after him. Like the old nurses when they kind of, the patient fell for the nurse fell for the patient in the Second World War, First World War, whatever. Yeah, they could have had that structure in place. Then Bill's wary of Frank, but he's looked after him. Then they form a relationship in episode 3 of this saga. Then I'm committed into I like Bill and Frank. I'm like them. Because so far, Bill's a bit awkward. Frank's really nice. But I don't care about them. I do not care about these two people. Because in the next episode, they're gone. Yep. So they're running, and then of course Frank's got a nice surprise. Is he's done some strawberries. Now, Bill's the one who sets all the traps, and I'm guessing again it's just me being pragmatic. Is you would make sure at least every other day that your perimeter and the circumstances that you've put there and all your traps are okay. So twice a week, let's say minimum, you walk around a perimeter, make sure everything's in place. He's got other structures there. You make sure nobody's in them. You just do a lookout. Wouldn't you come across this? So, and it's been there for a while because they've grown. So they have their things, and it's quite funny because Bill gets horny on a strawberry, and he wants to do it there and then. And Frank goes, "Not on the patch," and I like that. I found that funny. So, they go forward in time again, and there's the first threat, and it's annoying this because the first threat should have been a zombie threat. Yeah. No, they did a Walking Dead thing, and they went, it's humans. Humans are the threat. So what's, again, why ain't everybody just staying at home? You could have a little community. Stop. Now, this bit, again, I was like, what's going on? Because Bill apparently knows how he's got loads of weapons and he's done sort of traps. But he's got a sniper rifle. Well, not a sniper rifle, but a scoped rifle. And he is out in the open, full visible whilst people are attacking. And of course Frank comes out trying to help, does it wrong, and ends up Bill getting shot. And he's shot in the gut. Now, at no point, unless I missed it, and you have to tell me in the chat, in the comments, Frank is medical surgeon, because all he does is wipe it with alcohol. Okay, might be able to get it out, but there's no point that they have developed, and this is what I'm saying, they should develop the characters more, is to show that he knows what he's doing to get a bullet wound out. No, that's why it would have been interesting if Frank came injured and Bill had to medically bring him back to health. Well, make him okay. And then Bill, at this point, when he's in death's doors, I need you, Frank. I need to tell you what to do. Frank is a bit apprehensive, and it would have committed their relationship even more, because Bill is in pain and he's got to, surrender his control, because he is in control of the whole situation, because he's put everything there. Is, I need you, Frank. I need you to save me. Shut up and listen to what I need you to do, but this is down to you because I'm going to black out. This is what you need to do. That would have been a great insight of their relationship, but they didn't. Because the next bit, after we get Bill, looks like he's going to die, what's going on, they do another skip. And then the skip is, you get Frank in a wheelchair. And I'm like, oh, I thought it'd be Bill in the wheelchair, he paralysed. But no, it's things. And this is where I'll say, it's 10 years later. So everything's fine. Now they look proper old. This is what I'm saying. Joel looked good, and he looks good now. But apparently Frank is painting. There's something wrong. It doesn't go into it. It could be any kind of disease. We can speculate, can't you? But he says that it wasn't treated in the past, so it can't be treated now. And it's nice, this bit. It's showing that they, their love is blemished, and Frank is doing his stuff, what he could do, but Bill is looking after him. He's looking after his plants that he wanted to plant, and all this, and it's sort of like Bill's having to cut up his food, puree his food, and like give him, like a soft drink. So he's really ill, and you're getting, oh, that's a shame. But it's a shame. I don't care, because I'm not invested. It's just, this is happening on screen. This is a story. And then at this point, and this is like 50 minutes into the show, and you're like, where's this going? Because so far, the first episode was about Sarah, and then Joel was in it. The second episode, the first episode about Sarah. So the second episode was about meeting Joel in the new environment, but mostly about Ellie. Then the third episode is about Bill and Frank. So it looks like Frank is buggered, let's just say. Poor choice of words there, but his health is declining. So he decides he wants to end it. I've had enough. I made my decision, and I want to go. Now, this should have been upsetting. This should have been a moment, but it wasn't. It was just a screen full of things that should have upset you. Now, the music did its trick because it's a sad piece, and they make the decision, let's do a kind of marriage vows to each other, and they do that because that's what they dream of, and then it's kind of like the last meal, and then they sit down, he gives them kind of the first meal they got, and that's nice, and they get some wine, and Bill puts tablets in his glass. And this bit really annoyed me. One, them tablets can dissolve really quick, and when he downs it, there's no residue. There's not it would sink to the bottom even if there's powder, So he necks it. Like, I was thought about this. Wouldn't you eat your get your dessert and then just casually talk and not neck it, and literally give it a bit more? I thought that would have been better if they dragged that suicide. But then you find out it's a pact, but Frank didn't know, and then Bill tells him, I already took them. I already took my lot, so let's go to bed. And they go to bed to die. And then, okay, then at this point, I'm thinking one of Bill survived. Because there's the payoff. Because then the next scene is Joel turns up at the gates, and he knows the pin. So he beep, 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 comes in. I'm like, Bill's got to be there. Has to be there. Otherwise, this was a very pointless episode, because what was the payoff? So they come in there, and lo and behold, they go into the house, and it's I'm guessing it's a couple of months because nothing's really decayed, or maybe like I wouldn't even say a couple, but like week, maybe a week or two. And there's a letter that Ellie finds and she reads it, and it's saying, to whoever it may concern, but mostly Joel, because if anybody else would have died, with the traps. And then he kind of says, you can take what you want. The pin number to the thing is in reverse, and here's a key, blah, blah, blah. Don't care. And then you're like, so the payoff was for Bill and Frank to die. Well, we don't, to have Joel get some stuff to find his brother. The payoff should have been dragged out their relationship, committed, and then not what I don't get the suicide bit. I don't get that. Why wouldn't you have it that Frank got bitten or Bill got bitten and then one of them decided I can't live without them? I think that would have been a better payoff because you're in a post-apocalyptic world. All you're saying is he couldn't get medical treatment, but it wouldn't have mattered anyway because he would have died in the 20 years ago, even if, there wasn't the science there to help him. And I'm like, but I'm not invested in these two characters. It was a very quick love episode. But they're forgettable. I'm never going to talk about them again if I carry on watching this, to be honest, very boring program at the moment, because I came here expecting a post-apocalyptic zombie world, and we've had one kind of interaction where there might have been a risk. And that wasn't a great payoff. So Joel gets peed off at there's a remark in there that Tess, do this for Tess and Tess's things. Now, this bit, after you find out the timescales, and it was at this point, I was like, hold it, that makes no sense. It's because it must have been 15, 17 years, I can't remember the timescale, of when they sat down for dinner. And Joel looks amazing again. Now, but when they've been together, let's say 17 years. Spit it out there, 17 years. Was he really that upset? He should have been really pissed off. If you've lost your loved one of 17 years, you're going to be, when they just killed themselves by blowing themselves up, you're going to be a bit peed off. You're going to have a bit of a hump. He doesn't. He just, that's my face. That's my Joel face. So it was just a bit, oh, that happened. So then, of course, they go back and he goes into the shed, finds there isn't a battery. Oh, in the ute of the van, truck, whatever place you are, different places, different names. But then there's one in the fridge, or you can have the capability. I can't, whatever. So they go down into the basement, and there's a CCTV there. There's radio comms. Joel wants to get out there and get the things to go to Wyoming to find his brother. Now, we know from episode 2, there was that guy who was communicating with the fire something, aren't they? Firefox, or let's call them fireflies, or Firefox. Well, fireflies, aren't they? That they're out there. But his brother hasn't come back. Now, wouldn't this have been the opportunity to him to try at least communicate with them and go, oh, okay, we're closer, we might get a better signal, let's communicate with them, and let's see if we can get in contact. If we can't get in contact, then we've got to go. Because they're in a house, in a complex that is apparently fully secure. And Joel would have known this. So it's just a bit odd. Yeah. So they get some resources. Ellie takes some toilet roll. And then she finds a gun in one of the drawers, a pistol, in one of the drawers. And then she hides it away. And then she gets into the car, and apparently she's never seen a car. Even though we've seen the military driving around in cars, in their, like, vehicles in episode 2. So it makes out like she's maybe never been in one, but she would know what it is. So she just plays it, and then of course this song comes on the radio that Joel tries to explain, and then it does this kind of pan out shot, and I was like, oh, this is where on the window, because Bill said we've opened up the windows in his note, didn't he? So they pan out into the window, and the windows, flushing, and I'm like, okay. So the point of that episode was, and I was struggling, and it is a struggle because it's a nice episode, but completely pointless. So the only reason it's there because you don't get Bill or Frank surviving, and it's horrible to say this, but the writers wanted to tick a box and wanted to have that homosexual love story. Now, it's great to have that love story, but you drag it out so you're interested or have a bit of a payoff in their relationship, because I didn't care. I didn't care who they were. It was just nice to watch, and it was pointless to the story, because we're supposed to be watching a zombie series, aren't we? Yeah? And there was no relatively epic zombie, any struggle. There wasn't any danger, except for when Bill got shot, but then there wasn't any more. And what are the odds that Frank would have been there as well? Now, why I say that is, wouldn't it have been better, even though I rambled in saying, we should have dragged out, if they just would, that Joel and Tess, if you're going to do the flashbacks, that would have been interesting. But they just, come across this already happy couple. Yeah? And then it all goes down the pan. And slowly, what Bill thought he was doing to keep, him and Frank safe, he couldn't have, it was, it was downgrading, or there was too many threats. There was too many zombies, too many, him having that perimeter fence. Hello, who's that over there? They must have some stuff. The attacks. But nothing like that. So there's no actual payoff. If him and Frank, downgraded, and then, there should have been that moment where Frank, let's call it because Frank died, is the payoff for Frank. And I didn't like it that Bill, okay, I understand that he doesn't want to live on without Frank, but why wouldn't then Frank indicate at every opportunity, if this is why the suicide thing was wrong to do, is I want you to live on. I want you, to bring what you bring me, the love and the happiness to other people. It's just weird, And then they could have had that interaction with him and Ellie. Then kill him off episode 7 or something, But then he could have had that, he's trying to give, what Frank gave him, and then what he gave Frank to Ellie. And then he could have been like a father figure, because Joel's not a father figure at the moment. He's just bumbling along. So it's just a bit odd. I just didn't get the episode, because in the next episode, we've just gone to Wyoming. So what was the point? If this episode wasn't here, Joel would have been in the same situation. Ellie would have been in the same situation. The only obstacle here was that Joel didn't have a car, a vehicle, and then he got one quicker than he would have, because I'm sure he would have found something, or they would have had to walk there. So there is no point in this, because you take out Frank and Bill out of the equation, it all ends up with the same situation, because Joel and his brother, that's what they're aiming for now. Keep Ellie safe, go to find Joel's brother. So if you take this out, the series still makes sense. And that's my problem, because They don't have that interaction with Joel, Ellie, and not a lot with Tess as a group. What's the point of Bill and Frank? There is no point to the episode, and that's my problem with this. It was boring because I wasn't invested. It was nice, and it probably had the best payoff of the other episodes, but in the scenario, it is the worst episode because the scenario is supposed to be a post-apocalyptic world, and over that from 2003 to 2023, nothing happens except for one attack that we get to see in a flashback that's skipped over, and it's all skipped over. There's, it would have been good for, they planted some carrots just coming out there, and the carrots started to get mold, so they had to burn half their land off, and they're struggling to eat. But no, they've got full resources, they've got full wine, they've got full gas supply. There is no struggle in that relationship. So you can't relate to it because you're supposed to be relating to a post-apocalyptic world, the struggles. But these, Frank and Bill are fine. Bill was fine. Frank come along and they are fine. There was no interaction. It would have been good if they were struggling. First episode, Bill, as I keep on saying. Second episode, Frank comes along. Third episode, they're struggling. Fourth episode, then Ellie and Joel come over to help. They are downgraded. There's an attack. Something catches on fire, or they get overrun by zombies and they have to leave. Meanwhile, they didn't realise Frank is injured. Like he's going to die. He ends up, I'm going to shoot myself. So he goes off. Bill's there. They have a really romantic moment. Then Frank goes, you've got to do the right thing to Ellie. Boom. Done. Move on. Really, really upsetting. Would have been a tearjerker because it's over episodes. I'm invested in these two characters. I'm invested in their relationship, what they're portraying to us. But them just speeding it up, just going, oh, look. Relationship. Love story, quick, go, end. You're like, no, I don't care. Because am I going to talk about Bill and Frank in 2 episodes' time? No. Am I going to remember this? No. So it's a shame that they didn't invest in going, this isn't just tick a box. This is going to be integral to the story of The Last of Us. That you need Bill, you need Frank to drive Ellie and Joel forward, because this episode, take them out, Joel and Ellie are still in the situation. There's not that Bill and Frank are not there to drive any story forward. There's the issue. It's bad writing because they tried to do something that looked beautiful but completely pointless. Absolutely pointless episode. Nice, beautifully shot, written subject, really well done. To the whole overall story, absolutely pointless. No point of it at all. And it seems like that because if you look at it, there was no point to Tess except for she gave him a bit more time to get out of the building. Sarah, what was the point? Because it didn't transform Joel's opinion that we know going forward. So you've got the death of characters that you think are going to be integral to the storyline, who they just next, and then you're like, oh, so who am I supposed to be invested in? Joel and Ellie? They're not very likeable characters, and we've not seen much of them together on the screen because they had 5 minutes of boredom. And let's call it what it is. It was boring, their interaction. A little bit of fun. A little bit of, humour trying to be thrown in there. But it was boring. Then we jumped to Frank and Bill. What could have been really interesting. And it should have been interesting. It should have dragged out Like, it's like I would love to see the unedited version of this. If this was like we did it for 4 hours, then I'm invested, because it looked like, with the cutscenes and everything, and how they flash back, and then they just forward and back. It just seemed like it was bad editing because we needed to compress it. Yeah, it's weird. It's a pointless episode. That's where I will leave it. Completely pointless. That's my rant. But at the moment, if this gets to this, it's got to invest me, because at the moment I am finding this a really poor Walking Dead. And I mean end of Walking Dead, not the beginning of Walking Dead, because there was good characters. This is not gripping me enough to go, ooh, I need to remember to watch this, because I'm not invested at all. Not because they're not just giving me character given. They could have done with Bill. He seemed like an interesting character. Yeah, and I should have been upset about Frank. But alas, they didn't build it enough. But anyway, give me your comments if you think, no, it was I miss seeing the point. But you take them out. Was I? But I must say, Twit Twat are going on. That is completely different story in the game. It might be good after I've watched this to go and play the game and actually see, or just see some, maybe not play it, just watch some online gameplay maybe. But apparently it's completely different, so we'll see that. But yes, on that note, yeah, give us a comment if you want to comment. I can see a lot of YouTubers getting really nasty comments, because unless you are one pragmatic on this, it was great, it's going to be a lot of twats, not going to call them twit twats, just twats, who'll be like, oh, you didn't like it because of such and such. That's the bit I did like. It should have been 4 episodes. Yeah, it's a shame. But yeah, give us a like if you want to like. And as always, Stasis Geek out.